let's see. Was thinking about just going through certain movements and using kind of right now the staff or the spear, okay? And for whatever reason, everything just reversed here. I don't know why. Okay, so I'm going to have to spotlight myself because all of a sudden I was, not that somebody else can't be spotlighted, but I don't know why this stuff happens, but it does. So, a couple of words on flow. Okay, those of you that were at the Tai Chi class last night, I was mentioning do several sets. Because what happens is that, you know, we have a kind of a regular sense of body, you know, which is clouded by very, very much an overactive, noisy mind and eye. Okay, so as you kind of get into that, it's not repetition because you're doing reps this way. It's just that all of a sudden you start to go deeper and deeper into the flow experience. So we have kind of like a flow body. And as you sort of get into the flow body, a lot of the noise up here, I mean, I'm not going to say there's a mind associated with that, but there is. Okay, sometimes even if you're trying to just meditate or clear your head, you can't do that. So the Tai Chi is a little bit more like, we're just going to go and spend time and getting deeper and deeper into the experience of the flow body. And the flow body is accompanied by a mind. I'm not sure you would call it the flow mind. It's a clearer, calmer. As much as this overthinks, it tends to be clearer, calmer. And so we sort of attack the noisy mind-eye place by going more into the experience of flow through the flow body field. After effect of that, this quiets down. Physiological changes, you find your breathing starts to kind of settle to a deeper place. So one of the hard things is it's really difficult to calm the mind. If you try to do it, the noisy mind won't let go. It's got us in a death grip. Okay, that's why there's so much stress in the world. But by kind of really getting deeper in the experience of the flow body, the noisy mind's still going on, but we're starting to go deeper into a more original sense of mind. The flow mind is not mind at all, it's just I. Okay? Mind itself is mind. So you get a bit deeper and deeper and deeper into the flow body. So the mind, whatever you want to call it, starts to also deepen, get calmer. And that can't be fake. Sometimes, you know, you're here and all of a sudden you hook into that. You say, well, what is that? Well, it's a deeper sense of you. All right. Ultimately, you're not your mind or your body. You are kind of, you know, what we might call a self, a soul, a spirit. You exist independently of. On the other hand, we have experiences here which shapes the mind, but also the body. And as we start to go deeper into, for us right now, the feel experience of the flow body, the mind starts to come with it. And you'll find your breathing gets deeper, more rhythmic. Your heartbeat starts to sync up to the breathing. The sense of it is that we're clearer, okay? Not so much static, not so much graffiti noise. And all of a sudden, you know, we're kind of more like we're in a position where we see, feel more of the whole space or the room as opposed to tunnel vision. Okay. So we addressed that last night in the Tai Chi. Tai Chi is a lot about getting you to your flow body. In the flow body, the breathing starts to sync up, get deeper, calmer. And I'm not saying we attack because, in a sense, we're not attacking the noisy mind place. When you do that, you empower it. But you shift the emphasis a bit. And this is going to go on 24/7 anyway. But by shifting to the experience feel of the flow body, flow dimension, in O-sensei's terms, there's probably a universe, a flow universe. So he called, in his terms, I would say he called that misogi, because when we're up here, our senses get contaminated. We start to touch a more original sense of who we are through that. So, okay. So, what we do is we just sort of warm up a little bit. So we did the Tai Chi last night, but like what I'm doing is just basically improvising. It's a bit like a jazz solo. Okay, we still have. Okay, bear with me. Movement number 1. Movement number 2. Movement number 3. Movement number 4. Movement number 5. Movement number 6. Movement number 7. Movement number 8. Movement number 9. Movement number 10. Movement number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Okay? Now, that may be the beginning of it as you repeat it. Okay, now I'm doing reps. Okay, I'm doing wind sprint, something like that. That's for physical conditioning. So we kind of take this, for example, and we go up and down. And on this particular one, there's a bit more flow involved. What does flow feel like? It's very individual. Very individual. Okay. So I just went from a first repeating of those 30 moves to a second repeating. Oh, what does flow feel like to me? Feels like the movements are connected. Initially, I'm trying to learn each of the movements. Okay. 1 through whatever. I actually started with movement number 5. Okay. But when you're in more of what I call a flow body, a flow experience, as much as that and that, they're connected. And that, 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 and that. What does that feel like? Well, it's very individual, so it feels like what it feels like. Okay, now, what I'm going to say may help you, may not. The flow begins to start to feel itself. See, I get a certain amount of flow in my own system. But there's a lot, as I get a deeper sense of a flow body, this flow is flow. Oops, something happened right there. Check it later. The flow starts to feel itself through you. And it can't when this is too busy. And you can't get the flow until you get kind of the infrastructure. Even though we're using the 30 movements here, it has a sequence, it's a form. Most people never leave the form. They come into form, they die in form. And form is form. My body is a form. Eventually, my body's going to go. It's going already. I could feel that on a daily basis. Okay, you get old. So what flow is, it's like a current. It comes out of something, comes through you, goes back to that something. Joseph Campbell put it this way. You can either be the light bulb, which at some point is going to run out and be discarded, or you can be the current. And of course, it's nice to have a light bulb, so the current can go through and create the light. Good. But thought we'd go through some different changes, but at some point we're going to stick a little bit with 30. So again, repetition. Okay, I did it. Now I'm going to do it 5 times. That's the linear mind. The flow mind is not linear. In some sense, it's non-linear. If I were to say anything about it, I'd just say what Albert Einstein said. Imagination is more important than knowledge. You have to have a certain amount of knowledge for your imagination to be important. Imagination is not linear. You can call it the non-linear aspect of mind. Okay? So, we go again. Now here, I'm not doing the count so much, it's just all of a sudden. Okay. Okay. So for that, it's almost like instead of much feel the flow through the movements, the flow is actually kind of in some sense creating the movements. That's kind of a reversal. Okay. Obviously, there's a knowledge of that sequence. But, all right, so what I want you to do a little bit is do a couple of repetitions of the 30, and we'll check in. Okay. Anybody with a comment or observation on that? I mean, see, flow is very personal. What I say about it may not apply to you. Okay, anybody? Actually, I mean, pretty much, I guess it's just Cliff. So anything you might want to add or not?
Just that it seems slowly, glacially becoming more like one giant movement rather than 30 small ones. So.
Could you repeat that one time? It kind of came through
Sure.
on my garble.
Sure. It's very slowly and very glacially becoming more like one long movement rather than 30 discrete movements.
Yeah. I mean, basically, what I see is the same one. You know, you learn them one move at a time. Okay. But ultimately, there's a beginning and then there's a conclusion. And now, if you go, it's one movement, it's just all up here. So there's a sense where what you see is a form. Okay. Most people never get out of that. You know, we come into these bodies, which is form, and we die. And, you know, there's an area where we don't experience much. I mean, Sensei was a pioneer that way. He insisted he wasn't teaching religion or anything like that, although there was a real strong spiritual sense. He said, I'm teaching spiritual science. All right, from the standpoint of spirits, what I'm teaching is scientific. A little different than material science, which he said is good, but there's such a gap between that and the science of the spirit. Okay, so flow is one measure of moving from more the material sense of who we are into the larger sense of who we are. Anything else?
Not at this time, Sensei.
Okay, yeah. Now, one of the things about the 30 movements, okay, starts basically around movement number 22. But the way that is constructed is to start to get you out of the numerology, the linear, into flow, which is non-linear. You're not measuring flow. If you start to measure flow, you get booted back into the linear. Oh yeah, those movements have flow in it. Well, guess what? In looking at it, you're not in it anymore. Now what happens, for example, we did a couple of repetitions, body's more relaxed. Mind is clearer. In other words, a noisy mind, if I look for it, I'm going to get pulled into it because there's just so much of it. I'm used to being in that crazy, insane space. I'm not saying it's just insanity, but rooted more here in the breathing. I'm quietly feeling the room. So I have more of a 360 wide angle lens. That point is there, right there. If I look forward, all of a sudden I go into the linear. All right, so maybe I drag a little portion of flow with me. But flow is maybe the beginnings of what Sensei called the hidden realm. Okay, the Genkai, the world of the obvious, material realm. That's form. The hidden realm. Not just I feel calmer, but the space around me feels calmer. In that particular place, me, the dimension I'm beginning to hang out in, that dimension. Here, see, after a while, see, I'm kind of aware, conscious of that. Okay. If I let go a little bit more, all of a sudden, that starts to feel itself through me. So there are two beats. I am becoming more conscious. what we call consciousness or flow starts to feel itself through me. So as I said, it's very individual. Okay. Anyway. So, next step. We're going to start to major in movements 20 to 30. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Now, we just took it from the standpoint of the structure or the form. All right. I don't know it yet. I'm a little too drifty. So yeah, it's a point where you're a certain amount of just road practice. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. Okay. Now, for that one, for example, I don't call that flow, but it's getting in the flow direction. It's like the movements start to connect. It's not like 8 moves, 22, 30. Just the beginning of a sense where this and that and that and that start to kind of just connect. Okay. Now on that one particularly, even though I was doing a set of movements, the feel of flow starts to, just the word, it dominates the actual sequence. What's that like? Okay, now here, I'm in a boat making stops on the river. Boom, boom, going from port to port, boom, 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 boom. Okay. Now, all that while that river is being itself, I couldn't get to these different ports in my boat without the river. All right, so right about here, I start to feel the unity. The river touches all those ports. It's a preliminary place, but I'm beginning to really start to feel flow through the steps. Okay? So what I'd like to have you do is just do a couple where you go 28, just that. It's go kill. Okay? Boom. Okay? Okay. So for me, what I'm doing, I'm backtracking. I tend to be, I go into flow. Okay. And then, you know, sometimes you got to teach a class, so I go back into the actual movements. Okay, so I'm just kind of lay out maybe a roadmap. But anyway, when you start to get into, for example, the last sequence, the 22 through 30, it's a bit different than the other stuff. The other stuff is more like a dictionary where you're learning words. The last part, you're starting to learn to construct in a language. Okay? So, Cliff, anything you want to add right there, or can add, or want to add, or can't add? The last sequence.
Yeah, I am trying to let it be like one movement, but I still, you know, it still is also, because there are so many reversals in the spinning and the particulars of that movement, it feels a little more discrete to me. But then, you know, I try not to force it and just sort of let it flow from one thing to another. But there are these, it's like my first Tai Chi Sifu would say that there were these periods of, you know, concentration and focus, and then these periods of transition, right? Like there is the strike or the block or whatever, you know, the martial application for a particular move is, and then there's the space flowing around them, and I mean, they come to these moments, right? They come to the moment of maximum, like perihelion, right? or aphelion, and then it goes into the next one. But there are these, it's not like one, it's not, I mean, there are reversals and changes of direction, and there are moments where that happens, and those are on some level discrete, at least for me right now. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, yeah. I remember, so, you know, it was a little while ago. I don't, you know, Audrey hasn't been around lately, but she had a question about the next movement. When you're really in flow, there is no next movement. There is no next movement. In the flow body, as that becomes increasingly itself, when the Do Sensei puts it, I can start to be aware of a flow experience. There's the actual experience, a little different. A flow mind, initially, sometimes it's hard because, you know, you start to touch it, your mind goes blank, you go, oh my God, and it's kind of like we pull back in. But after a bit, it's like, you know, okay, that mind is what allows the experience of the unity of the river. Okay. I mean, it's a little bit like you're doing deliveries, but you're new, so you got to memorize the route of the delivery, and you keep forgetting. Okay, yeah. After a bit, all right. I remember reading Hermann Hesse's book Siddhartha, and he goes through a whole series of things, you know, spiritual this and spiritual advancement. Going back into the world of carnal lust, you know, and then all of a sudden, you know, he just winds up working on the river and just listening to the river. This is kind of an interesting thing right there. See, the river's going on, whether you're conscious of it or not. I could just be caught up in my own dialogue about who I am, what the world is. And that's a mess, believe me. Okay. Or I can start to navigate, going from, let's say, the world of form, or conversely, the world of I, or noisy mind, into more the dimension of flow. Flow is of the hidden realm. This is of the manifest. And sure as anything, we say this is real, nothing else is real. There are levels of reality. This is here. This is going on. Or Sensei, it was the third level. what do you call the divine realm, the Shinkai. But what we're going to focus on a little bit is we're just going to focus on getting our roots idea. And I just experienced through this. Kind of the root experience. This is still going on. This codifies things. See, the ocean is still going on during a storm. You need a lighthouse to let you know where you are. And if you don't see the lighthouse, crash. That's the awareness. But feeling is a bit different. The navigating from awareness, and all of a sudden we get too boxed in, we get the noisy mind. But increasingly working more the flow experience through the body. Flow body, this starts to let go, deepen. And initially, yeah, it's like, okay, I'm still thinking about the actual moves, but increasingly, okay? Now, what I'm going to do a little bit is, I'm just going that sort of motion. We use that as a bit of a gateway. That was here. These are movements I know, but maybe there's a connectivity or the beginnings of a super connectivity. So I use that. Use that. Am I thinking? Kind of. But it's more of a in the moment beingness there. You have to know the sequence, you have to practice the sequence. Yeah. And there's an area where this starts to know a bit about that. Manifest realm says, yeah, I know there's more than me, but. And that's different than, okay. I come up sort of from the roots in that other dimension of flow. Here, for example, what I'm doing right now, this figure eight, shifting, figure eight other hand. Now I just did the fire water change. Come up from underneath. Come up from underneath. Or come down from the top. Come down from the top. So look at a review. Right? And what I just did, I just went fire water change. Here, Nikyo comes in to Ikkyo. See how this all of a sudden, boom, it starts to move a bit. What is it? It's a circle, but it's also kind of more figure eight. Figure eight. Figure eight. Now from there, go this way. Figure eight that way. Figure eight. I just went into fire water change. Now, I was doing that facing me. Now I'm facing away. Figure eight. Figure eight. Now we'll fire water change. So what I'm starting to do is hang out more in that flow dimension, where mind is more, it's more original. You get deeper into the experience of the flow dimension, the mind starts to be more of an original mind. Imagination. 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 Okay. Do I know what's going to happen next? Not really. But that's the limited eye, which I need to kind of let go of a little bit. So here we're just doing come down from the top, come up from the bottom, come down from the top, and then see what comes out of that motion. Okay. So and that's kind of the transition. You're kind of going through the last third of the 30 movements. And you're using them as a gateway. Major shift, flow, body, more into the flow mind, not just sort of the this letting go a little bit and you're getting through it, but this starts to imagination. Imagination. All right. What's the next move? There is no next move. There's no next move. That's where I like to hang out. See, it's not that, the world doesn't make sense to me when I'm too locked into the manifest. And the world is not going to change just because I shift dimensions. But I start to make sense of me. Okay? I don't do this to change the world. But I think if enough people made that shift, the world would change. So what I'd like you to do is just a little bit of what we call free style or improvisation. Okay, and that's I use the last 8 moves or so of the .30 movement set. Let go plus. Okay. That's a pretty major step, by the way. It's a pretty major step. Cliff, do you have anything you can add there or want to add? Not want to add?
So one of the things I like about how you made the 30 movement form is that it ends in a different place than the beginning. And it doesn't end in a traditional kind of closing stance. Like it starts in a traditional closing stance, but it ends like, I'm just stopping at 30, and it invites a continuation. It invites and improvised movements 31 to 60, movements 61 to 90, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, ad infinitum.
Yeah.
And so I find it very easy, actually, to
Yeah.
transition from movement 30 to, you know, improvising around the concepts that I've been studying with staff in the last couple of years.
Well, there's an old Chet Baker story where Herb Alpert, you know, was very successful. You know, he had his Tijuana Brass recordings. He actually, you know, headed two recording companies. He was mega success dollar-wise. But, you know, as a trumpet player, yeah, he had a pretty good sound. And he basically played elevator music. And, you know, I used to listen to that stuff. Da, 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 da. It's pretty cool. But he goes up to Chet Baker and says, Chet, teach me how to improvise. And Chet Baker says, I can't, Herb. Improvisation is totally governed by imagination. And he added, or lack thereof. I mean, there's a difference. Yeah, you see what I mean? There's a difference between catching a formula. Da 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 da. You know, actually, I like that one. That was kind of Herb Alpert's first real success, called "The Lonely Bull." Da 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 da.
Yeah, he you know, he had a lovely smooth trumpet.
Yeah. No, he was, you know, he had a good sound.
Yeah, I like, you know, there's times when that's what I want to listen to. You know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a place for it. You're in an elevator, okay? You go da 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 da, whatever that is. But you know, if you were to say, okay, Herb, okay, improvise, I think he could do it to a degree. But you know, there's an area where Baker could just, all right, it's a muscle. I mean, sometimes, you know, what I've been doing lately is I just warm up with, I don't warm up with scales or anything. I just play a piece. And then I improvise off of that piece. I just keep improvising. Now what happens a little bit, I kind of go, da. But really it's a muscle. You know, imagination, as much as we look at imagination, when you exercise it, the stronger it gets. That's the non-linear mind. It's creative. And Einstein again said it's more important than knowledge, which is linear. We know this, that. What's between those bars? What's the next phase? It comes into being through the imagination, doesn't it? So yeah, it was one of my favorite stories, imagination or lack thereof. So when you're doing that, you're exercising. See, the opposite goes. In other words, you know, we got this noisy mind place, so we just start to get more into the flow body and the depth of it. All of a sudden, we shift somewhat from that ordinary noisy mind place, which is in what we call the manifest. And the mind starts to grow more original with itself. But the other thing is, at some point, you go the other way. If you can go into the more original sense of mind, you also start to pick up the flow body from a different direction. Okay? It's just the way that it works. And most people don't. They really kind of want to stay in the structure of it, which is understandable. All right? It's understandable. Structure is safe. I know that now. But as you kind of start to hang out more from this direction, you'll find, for example, that the linear, you know, starts to change as well. So you can do the linear again and again and again and again, and you're still linear. And a little bit of flow comes through that. But then when you start to reverse it, which is right where we are right now, you go back to the 30 movements and all of a sudden you go, oh, now eventually you go, I can't remember it as well. Yeah, that's a stage. It sort of knows itself through you. Again, a certain amount of flow in my system. But if I can clear, get it to a deeper place, flow starts to feel itself through me. Okay? And that's what I work on. Okay? You can work the linear model and you don't stop doing that. There's something new. It's going to be by the numbers for a while. But Baker was so good. He just said, yeah, I hear a song, I can play it. I hear it twice, I can improvise with it. Didn't know what key it was in. Didn't have any formal knowledge of chord structure. But he, okay. I did something on YouTube that Art Frank, one of his best friends, said, told me, he says, Jack, you're playing like Chet now because he didn't follow the chords. He played around and through them. Now, I haven't done anything lately, that earned any praise, but, that's actually the thing that I'm kind of, is wow, that's, and then of course, my mind takes it over. I go, oh, I can't do this, whatever. But, that's just, we all have our junk. Okay. So anyway. So, what I'm saying at this point, we're starting to hang out. So we went through the flow body experience, kind of bring some level of the flow mind here. Right about here. There is no next movement. There's that motion. And now there's this motion. Then there's this motion, 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 this motion. If you asked me to repeat it, I don't think I could. I could get the same place and do something else in that place, but I couldn't say I did 1 through 8. All right. I just couldn't. In fact, I don't want to. So what I'd like you to do is just come in at it from a different angle by a water change. Now the two-handed figure 8. There's still the world of form here. And find this result, check the body. The hips are a lot looser, clear. Breathing. So it's like I'm not. Breathing is so deep, and I am breathing, but it's not. And the movements of the form That movement has like all lightning in it. So has a lightning in it. So the slow boom, there's a lightning through the movements. The lightning is more through your hips than it is through your hands out there. So I think you to just, the term I would use is you gotta respectfully mess around, or you stay trapped in pretty much what's ordinary. And you begin to touch something, a little past it, but it's, I'm saying you make that reversal, you come up. And then you may want to go back, you're still going to do the 30 movements. But you begin to see yourself from a different angle. Okay, so respectfully mess around. Okay. Cliff, anything you want to add about respectfully messing around?
Yeah, I only hit the ceiling once, so that was good. Um, I did a completely different thing than I had done the last one. So, but I noticed that the movements tended to fall into, each movement was more or less correct, like an actual movement rather than just swinging a stick around.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a showman strike, and this is there's stuff from like the 30 movements and stuff from other movements that I've done with Joe. So,
Yeah.
so that was good. It felt good. It was a lot like improvising on the sitar,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
also has, specific techniques,
Yeah.
and you have to stay within the bounds of whatever raga you're in, but allows for a lot of freedom within that. And it was similar to that kind of feeling.
Now, what I'd like you to do is go through the 30. Just go through it.
Hi, Sensei.
Yeah, just go through it. We'll see what it's like. Tell me when you're done.
I am done.
Okay. Any reports?
A lot more flow.
Yeah.
Which I noticed early on, and then noticing threatened to mess it up, but I managed to not drop out of the flow. Merely noticing the flow will make me drop out of the flow. But I didn't have to think about the moves at all. I didn't think about what the move was. I was much more in the moment than I had been at the start of the
whole set, or whatever it is, came out of the flow dimension. And then we're kind of in the manifest, trying to learn it in a linear pattern. But it goes the other way. The nonlinear starts, kind of more from what we call the larger mind, which creates the body through which the movements come through. The usual way, okay, something's mental. I try to get the body to approximate a series of moves. And after a while, there's a little bit of flow as I do just the rote repetition that comes in. But the other angle, you're getting the direct nourishment. The Do Sensei likes the word right now, nutrients, the energies come through. And what is the flow? The flow is those vital nutrients of energy coming through you. So yeah, if you really need both You know, in other words, you know, you continue to work on 30 movements, but you start to also work the other direction. You see what I mean? Okay. Anyway, I thought that would be an interesting thing. David, if you wouldn't mind posting this one kind of quick, I think it's an important one. I'd like to post it kind of soon. Because there's a lot of things about it. We're not getting great attendance for the noons right now. Sometimes, you know, the people drop in, but I kind of put this one online.
Okay.
Well, okay, thank you. Anyway, I guess both of you are on the list, so I will see you at Willow Street Wood-Fired Pizza Los Gatos tomorrow. But I thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.
Okay, you take care.
See you tomorrow.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.